There we go. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Tom. Welcome along to the stream. As per usual, I'm going to ask, can you hear me loud and clear? Because I have had experience where I've just been talking to myself and on mute or something in the past. So let's see if I am in fact live before we get into anything in particular. I'll assume for the time being until I see anything in chat that I am in fact live and talking and don't look like a complete fool. But yeah, I'm going to be talking for over the next hour, going into the deadline. Thoughts going into team selection this week. Obviously, this is my team from Austria last week, and you are live. You ate live. There we go. Cool. We can hear you. Excellent. Thanks, guys, for giving me that feedback. So yeah, we'll get stuck into it as usual. I'll try and keep track of you guys in the chat. Just have a bit of a discussion, really, conversation about what we're going to do with our teams because once again, the template is looking strong and it is a bit risky to move away from it. However, there are some juicy options in that kind of mid-range and budget option sort of vicinity. For me, obviously Albon is talk of the town at the moment. His performance in FP1, FP2 and FP3 is quite phenomenal. Michael's just woken up. FP3, not a lot happened in the second half an hour because it rained, Michael. But in the first sort of half, there was some running. I'll show you the standings actually if we flick it over 2 seconds. That's not what we want. We want Silverstone. So yeah, this is FP3 here. You can see Leclerc was on top. Albon once again putting in a really fast time. I believe he was actually, correct me if I'm wrong, like 3/10 up on Charles Leclerc in the first sector. Like, what the hell is going on? Like, what is actually happening with Williams? I've put it up there on the poll. Is Albon and indeed Williams the real deal? Because we see Sargent also performing really well. He is consistently being P19, P20, and seeing Sargent here P17 in FP1 and then moving his way up to P5 and then P7 in FP3 gives him the hypothetical qualification position of 9th, which is his highest of the season. That coincides with Albon on the hypothetical qualifier. Alex Albon is predicted to be on pole, which I honestly don't think is going to happen. Let's face it, it's going to be most likely between Leclerc and Verstappen. I think the Ferraris look good over the one pace again, but race pace and degradation, particularly of this kind of a high degradation circuit, lots of high speed corners puts lots of stress on the front tyres. So I don't want to really go near the Ferraris because they've got that tendency to burn through their tyres a little bit more than the other cars up there, and I can see them qualifying on the front row, maybe P3, P4, and just falling back a couple of places. Conversely, the Mercedes look like going the opposite direction, don't look super hot on one lap, but as always is their tendency over the course of the race. The Mercedes do look strong going forward, and I've been all week desperately scratching my head trying to work out how I can get Lewis Hamilton into my team this week, and I just can't do it. I can't do it because I think that the Red Bulls are just too strong, and the only way to get Lewis Hamilton in your team is to drop a Red Bull asset, most likely Perez, and then you could go for a couple of other budget drivers and the Stroll and Guan Yu Zhou sort of slot. Let's have a look at what that actually looks like just briefly, because even though the Mercedes haven't super impressed, Hamilton's just incredible around this track. I'm not sure if I can even afford it. I'd probably have to go Sargent, and yeah, I'm pretty much stuck with a team like that. If I go Lewis Hamilton, it's kind of the only way around it, to be honest, unless you want to go all in on Williams and put them as a constructor or something, which I think is a little bit drastic. I'm sorry I got the window open, you can hear the traffic. Let me just shut that. There we go. That's hopefully a bit better. But yeah, it's definitely some food for thought with the Williams looking so strong, and indeed the McLaren is certainly interesting again in terms of their race pace. From what I've seen on a couple of different sources online, the race pace of the McLaren looks quite strong and stronger than their qualification pace. If it's going to rain as well, I wonder if the McLarens can sneak up into a good position in Q3 and then potentially hold or even improve on that position in tomorrow's race. I don't know, it's kind of tough. And so let's just say, even though I've been, kind of desperately holding out, hoping that Hamilton and the upgrades that Mercedes is going to bring is going to enable me to put Hamilton in my team, but honestly, as much as I would love to have Hamilton in my team around Silverstone, I think I'm just going to be sticking with the triple Red Bull stack here. And the only real positions I'm looking to change are probably these two positions here. Potentially the constructor as well. But that would be high risk in my opinion. Basically going against the template is high risk at the moment. Let's just put it back on the template for 2 seconds. I will catch up with chat in just a second. So this is what I would declare the template with the triple Red Bull, triple Aston Martin, Guan Yu Zhou, and I think a lot of people On Twitter, other YouTubers are going to stick with a team like this because it's just safe. It is a safe option, and indeed, if you broke the template so far, anytime you've pretty much gone away from the template, more or less, this season, you've been punished. The template is incredibly strong, and the risk is going away from the template, although there's a possibility of squeezing some extra points out. For example, didn't want to click on that. For example, go for a slightly differential team with Albon and Piastri in here for a very similar price to Guan Yu Zhou and Lance Stroll, just 0.1 difference. We could definitely go over a team like this. I'm very tempted to go over a team like this. Like I say, McLaren race pace is kind of interesting. Piastri is very good for overtakes. He's in like the top 5 for overtakes this season. Albon, as we know, has just had a really good last couple of races. He's looking strong. Consistently fantastic through the practice session so far. I'm very tempted to go over a team like this. However, the risk for me is not so much in terms of potential points difference. So I think Guan Yu Zhou and Stroll will probably score fairly similarly to Albon and Piastri. So then it comes down to how much of a risk is this risk worth it in case of budget restraints. What I mean by that is if I go with a team like this, Albon and Piastri either don't go up in budget or maybe even drop in budget because they have a poor race, and Stroll goes in the opposite direction, suddenly I find myself locked out from going with the template of Guan Yu Zhou Stroll. So to be looking further ahead just beyond this race, I think it's probably sensible just to stick with the template. However, it does pain me to say that, and I do really want to just go with some gut instinct and go with Piastri and Albon. And I think there is also the chance that they also go up in price. They've gone up in price in the last race. For all we know, the prices are a bit all over the place at the moment, so there's a potential for some snowball effect. The more drivers do well over a period of time, maybe they increase even more. We could see if Albon finishes in the top 10 again, maybe he goes up another million, and suddenly we're singing and dancing about our budget. However, like I say, there is that risk that doesn't happen, and you might have the opposite happen, and then suddenly you find yourself unable to get to the standard template of triple Aston Martin, triple Red Bull, and then probably Guan Yu Zhou or Tsunoda as the 5th option of the driver. So those are my initial thoughts for the time being. Let me have a quick look at the chat, see what's going on. By the way, if anyone in the chat who's keeping track of Twitter or watching Sky Sports or whatever can tell me anything about Guan Yu Zhou and the state of his car, I'd much appreciate it if you could put some news in the chat. Because whilst I'm doing this live stream, it's kind of hard for me to keep on top of live updates of what's going on in reality. So if anyone's got any news on Guan Yu Zhou and whether he's definitely going to take part in quali, I imagine he will take part in quali, but for sure if there's a chance he doesn't take part in quali, I don't really want to start off the week with a -5 because he doesn't take part in quali. So even though that would set him up nicely for the race starting in P20 in terms of overtakes and positions gains, just starting at -5 just seems completely stupid. In which case I'd probably either switch him for Tsunoda or break the template ever so slightly with going Albon Piastri. But anyway, let me have a quick look at the chat. It's pretty even in the poll at the moment in terms of Albon and whether he's going to be points they're taking. It's almost 50-50 actually. Let's have a look at what everyone's saying. So I go Verstappen, Alonso, Sainz, Stroll and Zhou. So why, Marcus, have you gone with Sainz over Perez? I'm assuming your constructors are the same as most of ours, Aston Martin, Red Bull. Is it in terms of budget? Can you just not get to Perez? Is there a budget issue you've got? For me, I think Sainz won here last year, which obviously gives him some pedigree. But I've already said, since the stream started, I was saying that I think that the Ferraris may struggle a little bit in terms of race pace. They look good over one lap, but I just don't, I think the Red Bull I feel like if you can afford triple Red Bull, you should be going triple Red Bull. Of course, there's always the risk of the old DNF and everything, but if you want to maximise the points, the Red Bull, strongest car, it's a track that suits them. They're good at straights, they're good at high speed. Red Bulls are going to be good around here. Perez, a little bit more form coming out of Austria. He should be in a better place. He should be feeling better than he was last week because he was ill. I think just in general, this week, I just can't pull myself away from triple Red Bull. So you saying that you're going with Sainz makes me put a big question mark over it. But, play your own game by all means. But in my opinion, I guess that's why you're here watching this stream. In my opinion, the triple Red Bull is too strong. Ferrari will qualify well, yeah. That's what I've been saying. Gone for it today. Stroll, Perez, Zhou, Leclerc. Albon and Sargent. Oh, well, nice. James, you're going. Finally, time to have some fun. It will be fun if the Williams is as strong as it seems to be. So, yeah, I don't know. That's, I have a crazy part of me has actually toyed with the idea of going with, the Williams constructor. What does that enable you to do? 10.8. Doesn't quite get you to, a Lando Norris or anything, does it? A little bit short. You could, I mean, Gasly, Ocon, they both potentially good options. You could go with a team like this if you want to cut down on the constructor and go all in on Williams and just be like, screw you, Aston Martin. I'm gonna have some fun. It's gonna, we're gonna have a fun weekend and just go for it. I have honestly considered Williams. I've also very much considered McLaren as another alternative. Going to go all in on McLaren. I say all in, like mostly all in. Won't be able to afford them with Albon. Go Piastri, and that leaves me probably like Saganya Joshi. Could also, if you really think that McLaren is going to do well, if you think that they're going to have a good race pace with those upgrades, Piastri, good for overtakes. Lando Norris, home race. Lando Norris, just an excellent driver as it is. There was an interview with Norris, I think, on Thursday on Media Day. He didn't seem super confident about his chances this weekend, and FP1, FP2, FP3 have also shown us that the McLaren hasn't looked that strong, but in terms of race pace, that's what excites me. It's not just about looking at the final, fastest times, it's race pace as well, and I think McLaren is potential for good race pace, and we could see a team like this potentially, but it's just so risky moving away from the template, isn't it? Have you used any power-ups yet? You mean the chips? I've got the chips on my, you see it down the bottom of the screen. I've added that to my screen thing down there, so you can see the chips I've used and the chips I've got left rotating down the bottom left of my screen. Hopefully it's big enough for you to read and you can actually read it. Basically, the summary is I've already used my no negative and I've used my final fix. I didn't use the triple DRS boost in Austria. A part of me kind of wishes I did, just to get it out of the way, and also it was a solid weekend for anyone who went for it. But the ultimate decision for why I didn't go with the triple DRS boost in Austria is because I find fantasy this year is so close, and small points margins can jump you or drop you thousands and thousands, like potentially even 100,000 places. Everyone in the top sort of two or 300,000 is very tightly packed together, and it's all about this year is very much about finding those tiny edges. And yes, if I'd gone triple DRS boost, I would have been very happy about it in Austria. But the reason why I didn't is because I wanted to save it for down the line for that potential of a Max Verstappen grid penalty, like a known grid penalty, where he starts further towards the back and can get those overtakes, positions gained, possibly driver of the day, and get a huge score. And if we can coincide that with a sprint race as well, we could be looking at a huge score down the line. And that's not normally how I play fantasy. Normally I play F1 fantasy much more safer, reliable, and in years gone by I definitely probably would have just stuck it on Max Verstappen in Austria, and it probably would have been the sensible option, and I wouldn't fault a single person for going for that. But yeah, in terms of why I didn't do it is because of how close fantasy is this year, and I wanted to give myself just that possibility of spiking a few more points further down the line. And so be it if it comes back to bite me and my triple DRS boost down the line doesn't pay off and I've lost out, and so be it. But like I say, this year I feel like it's a risk worth taking just to try and spike a couple of extra little points here or there. What else is happening in the chat? Oh, it's just jumped. I wouldn't remove Perez. No, I wouldn't. Lots of people saying that they're bored and they're just changing things for the sake of it. That's almost kind of what I'm feeling by looking at a team like this. It's almost like changing it for the sake of changing. Triple or double Williams? I've already commented on that. What would happen if we go with triple Williams? Let's have a quick look just to see what it looks like. How much budget do we have? We have 6.8 million left. We could, with that, then go to Lewis Hamilton. Oh my god, this team looks amazing. I think that's probably exceeded my free transfers though, hasn't it? Yeah, that's 4 transfers, so I'd have to take a -4 for this, and that does seem a bit extreme. Putting all your faith so much in Logan Sargent, who has really not impressed particularly well so far this season. So yeah, if you want to have some fun, going with the Williams triple up, it could very well pay off. They've looked genuinely strong through Friday and this morning, and it also enables you, if you want to go with Lewis Hamilton, because I think Lewis Hamilton's just an absolute god around Silverstone. For me, I think it's just a little bit too out there, and like I say, I'm going to stick with this triple Red Bull. I do like the option. You don't even have to go triple Williams. You could play it kind of safe and just go down to an Ocon or a Gasly or back to Stroll. You could also go over team. This is actually just template, except Williams over Aston Martin. I think it's a little bit too much still. I do think the strength of Fernando Alonso drags Aston Martin beyond what they're actually capable of. Even if Aston Martin aren't necessarily the second best team anymore. I think the power of Fernando Alonso and how good he is as of a driver actually pulls them ahead of Williams, even if the Williams looks like a faster car. I just have so much more trust in Fernando Alonso, despite the scarring that he provided me last season. His constant DNFing, despite his promise. So let's just retreat back to the safety of the budget for a minute whilst the template whilst I have another look at the chat. Let's have a quick look at the poll. So let's end that poll. So it's very slightly in favour of, oops, that's not what I want to do. Very slightly in favour of Albon. Let's do another poll to keep you guys busy. Speaking of poll, who's going to get pole? I mean, it's pretty obvious who's going to get pole. But is it? Is it actually? Let's have a look. We'll put the obvious option as first. I feel like I'm an incredibly slow typer when I've got like 100 people watching me, or whoever is, how many people are in here. Let's put Albon in there because, you know, Albon is first on the hypothetical qualifying. Who else is potentially going to get pole? Perez, even though I don't think it's going to happen. Let's shove those options out there for now, and then I'll continue to look through the chat. Triple Williams too risky indeed, Jose. No negative with Albon and Piastri instead of Stroll and Zhou. I mean, no negative chip this weekend is there's potential for it being like wet quali in that. I just don't think so. I think there's higher upside if we wait on the no negative chip. For me, I'm not going to be using any chips this weekend. For me, the final decision really comes down to, do I want Albon in my team and do I want Piastri in my team? Have a quick look at the statistics again if we throw it back to the spreadsheet. So Albon, as I say, is predicted first on hypothetical qualifier. Piastri is predicted down in P14, which isn't great, but obviously I'm relying on his race pace if that's the case. If we have a look at the quali data, Piastri and Norris this year have not been particularly accurate. In fact, no one has been particularly accurate this year, apart from actually Guan Yu Zhou, surprisingly. If we look at the quali data, how close the drivers are to their predicted qualifying positions based on practice times, we see Piastri is 4 or 5 positions out, and on 4 occasions he's improved this season, 3 occasions he's got worse than practice, so it's a bit unpredictable in terms of where Piastri is going to qualify. We look at Albon also, 3.7 was his average delta, so on average he's 3 or 4 positions either above or worse than his practice times. And you can actually see, interesting here, Alex Albon this season is improving a lot from practice going into qualifying. On 7, because I haven't included sprint races here, so out of the 7 races that I've been gathering this data, out of those 7 races, on 6 occasions Albon has improved from his practice performance. Like, that kind of tells me there's potentially a good chance that Albon is legitimately going to compete for the front row this afternoon. Last year, again, he was quite accurate and it was a bit more of a mix. A couple of times he was spot on, and it was fairly even between improving and getting worse. But this season in particular, Albon's just really excelling going from practice into actual quali. The question mark becomes, is the Williams race pace good enough? And I am a little bit concerned about the Williams race pace. I think it's decent, but I'm not sure it's going to be as good as their quali pace. So we could see Albon qualify, let's just pluck a number out there, like P4, for example, if he does exceptionally well, P4, P5, P6, who knows if that's, if his quali backs up what he's done in practice times. And I think, are we going to see Albon drop back a bit? That's the kind of the concern. And if that happens, then we could end up losing out a little bit in terms of points. And conversely, Stroll, who is getting worse from practice to quali, but then has good race pace, Stroll could then be moving forward, and Stroll could still be just a safe pick. I'm just sticking with the boring template, could be the way to go. I think I've completely lost my train of thought. Sorry, let me go back to the chat and see what's going on, because I've not got... What's this? Yogesh Rupani, Perez to Sainz, keep Stroll, budget to Albon. I mean, there's an argument for that. Again, I don't want to go against the triple up on Red Bull. Can I afford that? I can just afford that, can't I? It's not a bad shout. That's not a bad shout, actually. Oh God, why have you put this thought into my head? I had considered this, but I've been against Ferrari kind of entirely because I didn't like their their race pace potential, and I think Sainz, if he qualifies front row, for example, could drop back a little bit. It does enable me to get Alex Albon on there at fairly minimal risk, though. And Perez, he's back on form based on Austria, but is he truly back on form? Is he going to be competing for the podium? Is he going to have a good quali and a good race? Is Carlos Sainz a little bit of a differential to change things up? I've spent the last 20 minutes saying I'm sticking with triple Red Bull, but then you look at this team and it's like, I kind of like it. Jenks the Junior. No, I haven't decided on my final team yet. That is why I'm here discussing it with you guys, because I haven't made my mind up. And I would say, actually, as a fantasy manager, it's probably my weakest attribute of playing fantasy games is making that final decision. I feel like I'm pretty good at gathering information, coming up with pros and cons of different drivers, blah, 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 which probably makes my videos kind of decent. But when it comes to final decision making, I think that's the bit I struggle with the most. Really like putting your money where the mouth is and picking who you genuinely think is the best picks. I don't know, I've struggled with it a little bit this season in general. I think probably because the template has been so boring, and it is very tempting to move away from the template just to be different, just to spice it up, because the game itself isn't providing the fun it should. We're kind of forcing it a bit by breaking away from the template in order to try and make our own fun. And I've done that once this season by going like the clerk over Perez back in Canada, and then Perez getting the fastest lap on the final lap, just put pay to that, made me suffer. Every time I move away from the template, it punishes you basically. And excuse me, I really need some water. So yeah, although this team looks really nice, I'm not sure I want Carlos Sainz. I think I just want the triple Red Bull. Let's have a look what else is going on. Roy, are you using the chip for this weekend? I am not using the chip for this weekend. Is the long and the short answer. No, I'm not using any chips. I think they'll be better saved later on down the line. That said, Silverstone historically has had a few DNFs, particularly last year. In fact, if we look at last year's DNF rate, if we flick it back, let's quickly have a look at that. We scroll. This is the results from last year. Carlos Sainz obviously win, but look at the DNFs down here. We obviously had the triple sort of DNF right at the beginning of the race, and I believe last year, who was in my team last year? I had Albon in my team, Russell in my team. Who else did I have? I can't remember. I think I had a third person who went out here. I cannot remember, but I had like at least two of these people that went out, and in turn one, with Guan Yu Zhou with that massive crash. So quite a lot of DNFs here last year, and historically a few issues. Verstappen struggled a little bit here the last couple of times he's been out. In fact, he finished P7 last year because he had a bit of damage from what I remember. He had some damage, fell back a little bit. But no, in terms of chips, even though there's a bit of a chance for DNFs, I think it's just better saved for like no negative. And in terms of autopilot and that sort of thing, again, I'd much rather probably save that for a sprint race. Williams race pace in FP2, not that good. Yeah, no, that's what slightly concerns me about going with Alex Albon. At the same time, I feel like it's going to get to like Sunday evening, the race is finished, Alex Albon is like on the podium or something, and I'll be looking back at the practice sessions and being like, it was so obvious. Like, if you look at the practice times, it was so obvious that Alex was just going to be so good. Look, he's P3, P2. He's averaging first out of everyone in the grid, and I didn't pick him. I can see myself doing that come the end of the race. If the race pace is actually better than what we think. But if we're playing it safe, if we're playing it, kind of risk averse, then I think probably sticking with that template. Sticking that template is the way to go. Also, Guan Yu Zhou, there's a potential for Guan Yu Zhou to finally get that price rise. He's been stuck on 4.7 for the last few races. Everyone else around him, Sargent has one good race and suddenly he's up $500,000. Surely it's about time Guan Yu Zhou went up in price. So, moving away from Guan Yu Zhou this week when he could finally get that price right. Obviously, if he DNFs or whatever, then he's going to plummet again. Bless him. But I do think that there's a good chance, as long as Guan Yu Zhou has a decent race, he could go up in price. That's another sort of positive towards all in on Verstappen for the pole, unsurprisingly. Okay, what else we got? Are you using the chip? No, I'm glad I'm glad I gave you something to think about. Yeah, definitely worth considering. The team looks good. Yogesh, sorry if that's not how you pronounce your name, but yeah, I do think that the team looks good with Sainz and Albon in there, and if you want to kind of sort of hedge your bets a little bit against Red Bull, and particularly Perez, maybe you don't think he's completely back on form, then I think it could be a way forward. And I think the Ferraris as well. Have they? Correct me if I'm wrong. Oh, there's only 0.1 there. I don't know if it's just my random thinking that I thought that Ferraris were actually going up in price a little bit more than the Red Bulls moved. That's not the case. But yeah, I could definitely see some people going with slightly differential. It's still a pretty safe team. Let's face it. Like the scoring opportunity between Sainz and Perez, points potential probably fairly similar. Perez probably edges it. In terms of Guan Yu Zhou and Albon, again, I think on this occasion Albon probably edges it. The upgrades look good. So that there's I feel it's fairly low risk on going like this, but at the same time, I kind of just want triple Red Bull. They're the best team. That's kind of what it boils down to. Need help. I have to get away from the template to get Perez back on my team for Russell. Stroll, Piastri, Albon, Pedro, Zhou, or Logan. So are you asking me if Stroll, Piastri, or Albon alongside Zhou or Logan's the best? Well, probably. Well, that is the template. What do you mean? I'm not entirely sure what you mean by your question. So Stroll and Zhou are probably the most template picks and probably the safest picks. If you want to be a bit risky, you could go Piastri and Albon. But as I've already stated, I don't think moving away from the template just for the sake of moving away from the template and being different and having fun, inverted commas, is probably the best way to score points. If you can afford the template, it's probably the best thing to do. It's probably the safest thing to do. It's probably what I should do. I'm just very tempted to change things up and go Albon, Piastri. In fact, let's get them up for a second, just so you can see exactly the team I am considering. This is definitely a team I am considering. I've already gone over earlier on in the stream the kind of the risks associated with this. Primarily, budget changes. If Stroll shoots up in budget or Guan Yu Zhou finally gets his price rise, and then I'm kind of stuck. I can't go back to that Stroll Guan Yu Zhou team. And what is the next race actually? Hungaroring in a couple of weeks, isn't it? So who's, if I get stuck, I can't get. I anticipate. I think Aston Martin should go quite well around Hungaroring, so I probably would want to get Stroll back in. Whereas Piastri, Albon around Hungaroring, I don't think the Williams. Although it's hard to know exactly what suits the Williams at the moment, but Hungaroring doesn't strike me as a particular track that would suit the Williams. And getting stuck with a Williams driver, can't get back to template, does kind of scare me a little bit. So going back, just holding that template, giving you the option to either stick with it and come Hungary in a couple of weeks, or move away from it when we know a little bit more. At the moment the Williams step up in performance is very drastic and it's very sudden. It's only just happened. We don't fully understand it yet. No one really knows if the Williams is truly competing for the top sort of 5 position all of a sudden. We think back to Austria, it was okay. We think back to Canada, Albon did well, but the track kind of strangely suited them, and he was able to defend on those old tyres because of those long straights, and it was hard to overtake around Canada. Overtaking around Silverstone's a bit easier, and if the race pace for Albon isn't super great, then I think we could definitely see Albon drop back if that performance isn't super strong. So I think until maybe until we know a little bit more about the performance of the Williams for sure, maybe it's better to just stay safe with the template. And I know that's boring, and I know that's not what you're here for. I know you want to see me pick something crazy like Piastri and Albon, but I think safety and in terms of retaining your budget and being able to jump, being able to retain the template and being able to being able to move off the template at the right time is going to be key this season. Picking the right moment to make that change is going to be key, and to get those extra little gains. Is now the right moment? Is now picking Oscar Piastri and Alex Albon over the likes of Guan Yu Zhou and Stroll? Is that the right moment? It's maybe a bit early, but at the same time, if it's correct and Albon shoots up in price again, we could see potential driver of the day performance if the Williams on its home race, 800 Grand Prix, Alex Albon, British/Thai driver. We could see driver of the day easily if Alex Albon has another good race, and that's another 10 points, and suddenly he's up another million in price. So there's really big pros and cons for going differential and sticking the same. If you want to play it really safe and secure, I would urge to stick to the template. That doesn't stop me from being very tempted though to break away a little bit and just go with these two. That said, Piastri and Albon both up 500,000 on the last race. Are they going to continue to rise, or are they going to stall out? It's really unpredictable to know what exactly is going on with the price changes. Just check the time. Got half an hour until the deadline. Very good. I'm not sure if has anyone heard or seen anything about Guan Yu Zhou yet? Does anyone know whether he's going to get to qualifying? Has anyone said anything about that in the chat? If anyone can put something in the chat about Guan Yu Zhou and his car, if anyone's got any news on that, that'd be fantastic. Let's go back to the chat. Yeah. Let's go down. Oh, I don't know why it does this. I'm scrolling and it just suddenly jumps. I think it's when someone adds a new message in. Right, maybe the race is Verstappen's Monaco curse. I mean, yeah, I don't entirely believe in curses, but there do seem to be some tracks where some drivers just kind of struggle out a little bit more. I think back to a couple of years ago when I was actually lucky enough to go to the Grand Prix in 2021, and I was there on that lap one when Verstappen went off at Copse. The infamous who was at fault, was Lewis Hamilton at fault, blah blah blah, and went off and crashed out. And yeah, I do think that potentially, the next year along, Verstappen was damaged in his car, finishes P7. Could we see Verstappen struggling again? I think it's pure speculation to bet against him this weekend. So I'm not gonna go off on a hunch that Verstappen's gonna have something randomly go wrong with him. But yeah, I do think, Michael, that there are some tracks where some drivers just don't get on with particularly well. Yeah, I do remember very, very well. But like I say, back a couple of years ago, I was I stood down the Hangar Straight. I was watching it on the big screen, lap one, thinking, oh yeah, another 30 seconds or so, they'll be flying through here. Can't wait. And then when you look at the big screen, you see a big puff of smoke, and you think, oh god, who's that? And sure enough, you see a Red Bull flying off. You hear murmurs, whispers in the crowd. Is that Verstappen? I think Verstappen's off. And then there's me thinking, all I can think about at the time is, yeah, I put the Mega Driver on Max Verstappen. God damn. So yeah, that was not a great week for me. Not a great weekend in terms of fantasy, but I still had a good rank that year. So despite the Mega Driver that on that occasion falling flat on its face, but yeah, I think despite Verstappen having a bad, if you can call it that, couple of races in the last couple of years, I think Verstappen's just too obvious to go without this year. I'm just going to read through the chat. Bear with me for a minute. What if you can't afford both signs and Albon? Stick on the template. Second in the league. Yeah, that's another thing as well. If you're already doing well, if you've already got a good rank, then just stick with the template. Just keep in ahead of the game. When there's people like me looking at changing things and going Piastri, Albon, doesn't work out, suddenly the people with the template not doing anything, just keeping that template, are just edging ahead of everyone, whilst everyone else is scrambling around trying to find that edge. And it's really tight. It is really tight this week. Do we break away from the template ever so slightly? I think there's definitely opportunity given the race pace of Piastri. If we didn't want to go Albon as well, who else could we afford down here? I mean, there's not really much choice. We could do a slight difference. We could just keep Guan Yu Zhou, hope he gets that price increase, and just drop Stroll down to Piastri. Obviously, again, if Stroll goes up in price, then we could be locked out getting Stroll. Then we're kind of banking on the likes of Gasly not going up in price, so maybe we can jump on to Gasly next week if Stroll goes up, or vice versa. So again, there's these risks with the budget. Now the budgets are just inconsistent. It's hard to predict who's going to jump, how much is going to jump by, who's going to fall, who's going to stay the same. And getting locked out of the template is a bit of a concern. Right, has anyone said anything about Guan Yu Zhou? The only guaranteed news on Zhou is that he won't move in price again after this weekend. Well, yeah, it does seem a bit stuck. I feel like the developers are kind of having a big joke about it. They're probably, don't know. I doubt they watch any of the content from any of us YouTubers or Twitter people, but I do think that if they were, they would probably just be like, let's just keep Guan Yu Zhou at 4.7 for the rest of the season, just for a laugh. Right, 800 going for 800 in the world. Oh, you're 800. Oh wow, that's really good. I'm assuming you've used a good amount of chips, Luke. But 800th in the world right now. That's fantastic. Going for Piastri Albon with the rest template for the fun of it. That's bold. That's very bold for someone in the top 1,000 to break away from the template. That's very bold, but maybe that's what it takes to, move ahead. Even you could see yourself drop a little bit from that, but yeah, I mean, there is definitely that big temptation of going slightly differential. if it was purely based on points, I think I would just go with this, because I think there's a chance that this can outscore Guan Yu Zhou and Stroll. The thing that concerns me is more the budget and getting locked out of returning to that safety of Guan Yu Zhou, Stroll. If Guan Yu Zhou has a good race, we might finally see that budget increase. Stroll might go up again to 9 million or whatever, and suddenly I'm locked out of it and I'm fishing around. I can probably get to Stroll, but then I'm going to end up with someone like Sargent or Hulkenberg. I mean, maybe Sargent's not the best, not the worst shout anymore now that he's got an upgraded car, but yeah, I'm a bit scared about going against the template, mainly because of the budget increase. But at the same time, if I don't go against the template, am I ever going to climb up the rankings at all? If everyone's just got the same team, are we just going to be staring at each other at the same rank forever? Is everyone in the top 100,000 just sat on the same amount of points? It seems to be. Alfa Romeo's race pace is trash. I have noticed quite the trend over the last few races that the Alfa Romeo is pretty trash. Let's face it. Let's have a look at if we scroll across to the points per race trend. Have a look at Guan Yu Zhou points per race. So at the beginning of the season, he was averaging 15, 10, 12, 6, 5, 6, 7, 7, 7. He's kind of holding steady around that 7 points per race, despite them, taking a bit of a nosedive. Let's have a look at the Alfa Romeo themselves. 30, 19, 21. So kind of a bit of a steady decline, then evens out again. So the Alfa Romeos are fairly consistent, even though the race pace is trash, as you say. But as we also know, Guan Yu Zhou is the king of overtakes. Let's have a quick look at that. Overtakes, Magnussen is actually the new king of overtakes, as we can see from this graphic. 55 overtakes. The trouble is, look at the positions gained, the race pace, tyre degradation for that is just terrible, which is why Magnussen is set on -1 for the season, when Guan Yu Zhou is actually on 22. If we sort this by positions gained as well, actually, let's quickly. Never remember which way around it is. I think it's this way around. Nope, I knew I was going to get it wrong. The other way around. Column H. There we go. So ignore Perez, he's an anomaly because of his awful qualifying. Guan Yu Zhou is actually top in terms of positions gained and lost over the season. So not only is he second in terms of overtakes, but he's also second, or arguably first, if we ignore Perez, the anomaly, in terms of positions gained and lost. And that's where these budget drivers make all their points. So yeah, I think Guan Yu Zhou is still a good option despite the Alfa Romeo being trash. How many chips have you used? Look at the bottom left of your screen. I've added that in just for this stream. And I'm going to keep it in there going forward, just so you can see. I want to be a bit more transparent with my rank and chips I've used and everything. Bottom left of the screen. Hopefully it's big enough. In fact, if it's not big enough, please let me know. I can make it a bit bigger if you think it might be useful in terms of seeing what's going on down there. But yeah, if you want to see my previous ranks and what chips I've used and that sort of thing, bottom left of the screen. Stroll to Albon, checks all the boxes. Template, change to Sargent. Lots of people asking about Sargent. I think Sargent is definitely improved on this weekend, but I think that it's a little bit too early to just jump on him. We could definitely see another price increase if he does do reasonably well. But I think it's too early to jump on someone like Sargent personally. But yeah, I think it's a risk as it is just going for something like this. Do I go with this? Do I just try and break that template? What's the worst that can happen? Let's look at the worst case scenario. I go with Piastri. I go with Albon. They both have poor to mediocre races. They either stay the same price or drop maybe $500,000. Suddenly, I'm say $1 million short of getting Guan Yu Zhou and Stroll. Maybe I can afford Gasly instead, or if Gasly goes up and I'm stuck with Stroll. Is being stuck with a team like this, if I can't get back to the template, is that necessarily the worst thing in the world? At the same time, is there that much to be gained out of going differential to this extent? If you look at ownership, they are really low owned. Albon 12%, Piastri 10%. Stroll, surprisingly, is still only 30%, which I find kind of shocking. He should be a lot higher owned than that. I guess the other, in that price category, you got Gasly. But I'm surprised that they're both kind of so low owned, to be honest. And then Guan Yu Zhou at 17%. They're all kind of low owned, to be honest, but even more low owned are Piastri and Albon. So we could, there is a high ceiling if McLaren does perform well, if Albon does do well, price increases, potential points. There is a high upside to a team like this. I just think template is just, that safety blanket that everyone wants. Let's have a quick look at what else. Has anyone said anything about Has anyone seen anything about Guan Yu Zhou and qualifying, by the way? Zhou out, Sargent in. He gets upgraded this week, slightly better pace than Alpha. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I'm still not entirely confident. I think that Guan Yu Zhou is still a reasonable shout. I've just gone over the actual statistics there. We saw the numbers don't lie. Guan Yu Zhou is the second best overtaker so far this season, second to Magnussen, and the second best, arguably the best in terms of positions gained. So, despite the Alfa Romeo being rubbish. Oh, man, my throat's getting sore. Too much talking. All right. Has anyone seen anything? I've got 20 minutes. Oh my god, I need to make a decision. Yeah, please. Anyone seen anything about send this poll about Guan Yu Zhou? Is he taking part? In fact, I need to have a quick look on. I'm going to have a look on Twitter, see if there's any news. Excuse me for 2 seconds. Don't think there's going to be any news on here, is there? Is anyone watching Sky at the moment? Has anyone got any information about Guan Yu Zhou? Because I am a bit concerned. You know, he might not take part in quali or whatever because he didn't get out in FP3. Oh man, I don't know. I can't see anything. I can't see any news on Twitter. Can't see anything there. Right, what we got here? Nothing from Medland on him. Thank you, Michael. Yes, Piastri. Yeah, Piastri has got the upgrades. I don't know. I know Zach Brown was saying that the upgrades from McLaren were going in like a 50%, 25-25. So I'm assuming that means that Norris has got 75% of the upgrade and he'll get the rest of it in the next race. And I guess that means Piastri either has 50% or 75%. I'm not sure exactly. But for sure, Piastri definitely has some amount of upgrade this weekend. Oh, thank you very much, Saif. €2. I will use that to buy a cup of coffee or something. Thank you. Should I use no negative now or keep it? If I still have my no negative chip, which I don't, I would be saving it. I wouldn't be using it here. I think there's potential for it to be useful, particularly, you know, we saw last year a lot of DNFs, particularly in on lap 1. But I think it's going to be more useful down the line. I've got Singapore kind of singled out for that down the line. If you haven't used it so far, I think Singapore is potentially a good place to use it because it can be a wet race and it's also just a super tight, dangerous circuit where there's a high chance for DNFs. I don't know what the DNF rate was last year actually. Let's have a quick look around Singapore. Scroll across to the race. Oh wow, look at that. DNF, 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 DNF. Yeah, maybe save it for Singapore. In terms of no negative, if I had it, which I don't, then I would be saving it for Singapore, I think. I could afford triple Red Bull, Alonso, Norris and Albon if I swap Aston to Williams. Yeah, I mean, there's something I've toyed with. If you look at my phone, which I can show you actually very quickly. Look at my phone. It's full. I don't know if you can see that. It's full of screenshots of different teams, of like McLaren drivers, Williams drivers, everything. I don't know if you can see that at all, but yeah, I've been fiddling around looking at different builds and things. So I've definitely considered a lot of things. I considered going like McLaren. I think moving away from Aston Martin is just too drastic at this point. I think going all in on Williams when there's still some uncertainty over exactly how strong they are is I don't know, a bit of a risk. I do need to actually make a decision here. I've got 15 minutes. I've been talking pretty much non-stop about my thoughts for the last 45 minutes, and I've already commented on the fact that my final decision making is what I need to improve on the most. So I need to actually come to a decision here. Maybe you guys can help me out. In fact, let's put one more poll up just to see if you can help me out. Right, so we're gonna go Piastri. I know what I feel like I already know the result of this poll is going to be, but we'll go with it anyway. We'll see if you guys can surprise me. There we go. Okay, what else we got in here? I think it'll be yeah, Piastri's upgrades. Is Piastri's upgrades the reason he's in the team? I mean, yeah, the McLaren pre-upgrade was just, I wouldn't even basically consider it. But now he's got the upgrades, and we see, if we go back to the spreadsheet quickly, If we scroll all across to the front page, we can see in terms of positions gained in that, Piastri unfortunately is actually quite low down. He's fallen away a little bit. He's had a DNF, which hasn't helped that. So that is a concern. But if we sort this by... it's the other way around, isn't it? This way around. Done it wrong again every time. Crying out loud. It's that way around. There we go. If we sort it by overtake... It's not overtakes at all. Why have I... Column I. My goodness. We'll get there eventually. Column I. There we go. Right, we see Piastri here. We got there in the end. Piastri, in terms of overtakes, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th, or joint 4th technically, alongside Tsunoda. You know, all season we've been saying Tsunoda is pretty good for overtakes, and you know Piastri is quietly going about his business and is now level with Tsunoda. So you know, if Piastri starts pretty well, he's got that upgraded package. We could see a decent performance from this weekend, and you know, I am really tempted to do this. How likely is it going to be for rain tomorrow, Pot Pan Dad? I think, let me have a quick look. I think there was a chance of rain still last time I checked. Let me have a look. I don't know if Weatherman Rob's still in here. Rob, you know all the weather. Let me have a look. So that is, can we have a look at tomorrow's? Why can't I see tomorrow? Sunday, here we go. Sorry. It doesn't actually look like it's going to rain, to be honest. There's a 40% chance of rain at this is from the Met Office website. 40% chance at the beginning of the race, and then it goes down to like less than 5% and sun and cloud. So I think most likely it is unlikely we're going to see a wet race tomorrow. Cloudy tomorrow, yeah. So I think it should be a fairly safe dry race, which probably suits the Williams, I'd imagine. Why not just remove Stroll for Albon? Yeah, I mean that's another thing. If I want to play it kind of safe, I could keep Guan Yu Zhou in there. Don't have to go with Piastri. Just kind of play it safe. Just put Albon in there instead of. Going forward, if Albon, if the Williams upgrades are as good as they seem to be, maybe this becomes a new template. Maybe we just drop off Stroll and put on Albon. Oh God, I keep saying I need to make a decision. I've only got 12 minutes to actually do this. Chips? No, not using chips is the long and short answer to that. Let's have a look at the poll. Oh, a fat lot of help that is. That's pretty much what's going on in my head right now. 54% of you are saying go Piastri Albon. 45% are saying Stroll and Guan Yu Zhou. Again, there is an argument potentially for going Sargent, and to be honest, that could be a way around. If I do get locked out of the template, as long as Sargent doesn't go up more than 1 million, which I find very unlikely, I could quite happily go with a team like this. If I get locked out of the template because I've risked it going Piastri and Albon, then I could fall back on the template and this become my new template. Obviously, it means I've got Sargent over Guan Yu Zhou, which isn't fantastic. I'm just thinking ahead to like Hungaroring if I get locked out of the template by going with the team. A part of me just wants to go with it, to be honest. I think there's fairly low risk involved with going with a team like this, and also fairly low upside. It's kind of a bit of a meh kind of decision. Like I said earlier, the main concern for me is dropping out of being able to afford the template of Guan Yu Zhou plus Stroll. I don't think there's a great risk of that happening, and like I say, Gasly could be an option, although Gasly is quite strong as well. I mean, Gasly is definitely a contender for our teams as well. A slight concern over the Alpine race pace, but the Alpines in general just look quite decent and have, they've spoken quite positively, Gasly and Ocon, about their chances this weekend. So we could see Gasly being an option. But for me, it's going to be between basically template, Stroll and Guan Yu Zhou, or I go a little bit differential, try something a bit different with Piastri and Albon. I'm kind of tempted by it. And the same kind of strategy as last week, where I didn't go triple DRS boost because I wanted to try and spike points down the line. We could be trying to spike a little bit here, maybe catch a nice little drive of the day for Albon on the Williams home race and everything. Piastri, how much time have I got? 10 minutes exactly. 50-50. The poll is now 50-50. Well, thank you so much, guys. You're better off keeping the template and seeing if the newcomers prove themselves. That is kind of what I'm thinking on. Piastri is a bit risky because of McLaren DNS. Why not Albon and Zhou? I mean, yeah, That is another consideration. If I didn't want to go too far away from the template, could just go like this. Albon just looks good. Again, let's have a quick look at the actual practice time sessions. You know, there's a lot of and ahhing. Is Albon the real deal? You know, where is Stroll actually? Where the hell is Stroll? P8 on average. So if we look at FP1, he was in P9, and he is P6, and then he's down to P13. Although FP3s isn't super representative because of the rain. And we know that Stroll doesn't particularly qualify well, but then seems to do well in the race. He'd probably pick up a few positions gained, overtakes. I feel like Stroll's probably just a safe option. I just hate going with the template, to be honest. Yeah, I do need to make a decision though. I mean, look at Albon. I can honestly see post race tomorrow. I'll be looking back and thinking Alex Albon was number 1 on my hypothetical qualifier, and I didn't pick him. And I could see myself just cursing him. Also, a couple of weekends ago in Canada, my girlfriend, who has random favourite drivers, last year it was Vettel, but he's retired, so Albon is my girlfriend's new favourite driver, and she was like, you need to pick Albon. This was pre-Canada, and I was like, you need to pick Albon. I was like, yeah, I'm not sure, he's got upgrades, but like stayed away from him. I think I went with Tsunoda in the end, and sure enough, Albon smashed it, like driver of the day, plus 10 points, $1 million in budget. And has my girlfriend let me forget that ever since? No. So is it about time that I listened to my girlfriend and actually put Alex Albon on? Possibly. I feel, yeah, you know, I don't know. I'm not sure. I feel like maybe, I don't know. Maybe Piastri. I need to make a decision. I've got 8 minutes. I kind of just want to go with Albon. This game is, let's face it, it's not been fun. It's not been fun, and I think the way to score points is probably stick with the template, play it safe, be boring, and just gather those points. But I think it's kind of low risk. Like I said, there's kind of low upside. There's kind of low risk of going Stroll to Albon. Stroll doesn't particularly qualify well, and he is pretty good at just gaining those positions, though. God, am I gonna? But I can honestly see myself just cursing myself post race, and for not having Albon in my team. I kind of just want Albon in my team. I feel like it's literally staring at me in the face. Albon P3, P3, P2, hypothetical P1. Yes, the race pace might not be there. Yes, he may fall away a little bit. Yes, Stroll could go in the opposite direction and just outscore him. Ugh, I don't know. And then also we've got Piastri to deal with as well. The race pace, man. The race pace of that McLaren is tempting. Could we just do a little bit differential? What's the worst that can happen? Piastri. Oh, Michael, you've gone for it. Piastri and Albon. No, now you're really tempting me. Like, as soon as I see some like positive feedback there, like, oh, someone else has gone for it, that's it, I'm going for it. What's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is I get locked out from the template. But even if I got locked out from the template of Stroll plus Zhou, the worst that can really happen is next race go Sargent and Stroll, or Gasly and Zhou, or the risk of being properly locked out the template isn't great, and there is the chance of just having that slightly differential team. You know, I've been saying so far through this weekend that we need to look for these little marginal opportunities to try and squeak out a few extra points. And, you know, possibly with so many teams just sticking with that triple up Aston Martin template, I'm slowly talking myself into pulling the trigger on the Albon Piastri team. Like I say, I am a bit concerned about Williams' race pace, but their performance has been absolutely incredible through practice sessions. Albon is on really fantastic form. Like I say, there is the chance for a driver of the day performance for Albon, which is another little bonus. And then Piastri again, I'm tempted mainly because he's got the upgrades. The McLaren looks good race pace wise. Doesn't look spectacular in the qualifying, which is kind of what we want in terms of fantasy. And it's kind of one of those, you know, I'm not drastically breaking away from the template. I'm sticking with the triple Red Bull. I've still got Alonso, still got Aston Martin constructor. Like the main bulk of template is there. But just this little tweak, a little bit of fun, and low risk, low gain, but low risk. It could be a time to make that change. And yeah, I feel like I'm talking myself into this now. And obviously, the double DRS boost thingy is going on Max Verstappen. I literally have not even. I've been talking for almost an hour, and I haven't even discussed the double DRS boost. That is definitely going on Max Verstappen, in case anyone's wondering. Let's have a quick final look at my chat before I lock in my team, because it might be wrong. But if it is wrong, then I don't want to be right. Send it, do it. I've made the changes. I'm off to make coffee. Have a great quality. Thank you very much. Thank you for the stream, Rob. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, no worries, Michael. Thanks for hanging out, and good luck. Like I say, I feel like I've talked myself into this. Like I say, I feel like it's fairly safe. I might be locked out going forward of the hardcore template of Zhou and Stroll, but let's have some fun. Should we have some fun? Last little look at the chat. Put in the pastry man. Why you can all be wrong together if so. Yeah. What's the worst that can happen? We're gonna go with it. We're gonna go with it. You guys, you influence me on these streams too much. I should probably stick with the template. The template's probably right. If you're gonna lock in your teams now, I'd say pick the template. I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna go template with a slight difference this weekend. Let's have some fun. Let's make these substitutions. You're about to make 2 changes. Stroll, I'm sorry. Please have a bad weekend. Guan Yu Zhou, I'm sorry. Please don't finally get your price increase. And Albon, Piastri, welcome to the crew. Free transfers, 2 out of 3. Didn't use any extra points. Still got a bit of money in the bank. No chips being used. We're going to confirm. There we go. We're in. We've made the changes, boys and girls, should I say? Yeah. Super like for your stream. Yeah. So that's it. Me locked in. Like I say, I feel if we're looking at purely looking at the numbers and the points potential and the budget risk and that sort of thing, I think sticking that hardcore template of the triple Aston Martin with Guan Yu Zhou is perfectly reasonable and probably the safe thing to do. But like I've also said, we need to look for these small opportunities to just change it a little bit. I'm not going drastic. We're sticking with the the double Verstappen, the triple Red Bull. Fernando's still doubled up in there with Aston Martin constructor. Nothing drastic has changed, and there's a little bit of a fun element for me now. Let's see what Albon and Piastri can do. Yeah, thank you very much everyone for joining me on this. It's been really nice to just kind of talk through. In a way, it's really helped me to kind of project rather than just staring at my phone, looking at different team builds, thinking it over and over, stewing it in my head, actually getting it out, talking it through with you guys, interacting with you in the chat has been really good fun and has helped me come to the final decision. Whether that's the right decision or not, we'll find out. The deadline's about to hit, so team is locked in. Thank you very much for joining. I'll see you again in a week or so's time, looking ahead at the Hungary Grand Prix. Everyone have a lovely rest of your weekend, and I'll catch you again soon. Yeah, thanks very much, and bye for now.